welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I'm Catherine Hadro in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thanks for joining us. In this week's show, a Chinese mother of 5 responds to the new Planned Parenthood president. Abortion groups miss the mark on Humans' Rights Day. And this.
I think there's an image, the Pinterest perfect family, it doesn't exist.
Embrace the mess. One Catholic couple shares how sometimes family life is messy, and that's okay. But first, our top story, the Supreme Court sides with Planned Parenthood this week by refusing to hear a case on stripping the abortion giant of Medicaid funds. The Supreme Court rejected appeals from Kansas and Louisiana to prohibit Planned Parenthood from receiving Medicaid money. The issue at hand is who has the right to challenge a state's Medicaid funding decisions, private individuals or the federal government. Newly confirmed Justice Brett Kavanaugh sided with the majority in voting to not take up the case at the Supreme Court. Justice Clarence Thomas, in his dissent that was joined by Justices Samuel Alito and Neil Gorsuch, wrote, "So what explains the court's refusal to do its job here? I suspect it has something to do with the fact that some respondents in these cases are named Planned Parenthood." Pro-life groups including Americans United for Life, Students for Life of America, the March for Life, and the Susan B. Anthony List quickly responded to the High Court's announcement, expressing disappointment. Joining us now from the Susan B. Anthony List is Mallory Quigley, the Vice President of Communications. Also here in studio is Gayle Trotter, an attorney and spokeswoman for the Judicial Crisis Network. Thank you both for being here.
Great to be with you.
First off, I want to get your reaction to this announcement from the Supreme Court. What do you both make of this?
Gosh, well, from an activist perspective, it's incredibly disappointing. I mean, the states have been trying to stop taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood for a long time, and these 2 states sought to limit Planned Parenthood on their list of Medicaid providers, and we're really disappointed. We wish that they had taken up the case, and I think Justice Thomas put it best in his dissent when he called out his colleagues for not taking this up.
Right, and unrelated to the pro-life principles, it's disappointing that the justices decided not to take up this case because even though it's tangentially related to abortion, there were many reasons to take the case up apart from the fact that it touched on that. And Justice Thomas in his dissent essentially says that the Supreme Court should not be afraid to take up these issues just because they're part of a controversial national issue.
Can you walk us through this, Gayle, and how states have started barring Planned Parenthood from receiving Medicaid funds?
Right. Well, some states have looked at the practices of Planned Parenthood. You might remember that there were video evidence that Planned Parenthood had engaged in selling fetal body parts. There were also billing discrepancies that were alleged. So some of the states have decided to take Planned Parenthood off the list of preferred providers for Medicaid. And there are 70 million people in America right now who are part of the Medicaid system. And these states have decided that these Planned Parenthoods are not a good provider for the services that these 70 million people need.
So to clarify, Planned Parenthood is a party in this case, but what role does abortion play?
Right, well, the question presented in this case is really a legal question. So you're looking at who has the ability to sue. So the state makes a determination that these providers are not going to be allowed to charge Medicaid for their services, and then individuals in these states decided they wanted to sue the states for that determination. So it does not implicate abortion itself as the main issue of the case, but because Planned Parenthood is a party, there's at least the thought that it is related to that in a sense. And also the question is whether states can be sued not only by the individuals but also Planned Parenthood.
Mallory, are these cases an example of a national effort to start defunding Planned Parenthood?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think, a majority of Americans, whether you call yourself pro-life or pro-choice, don't believe that our taxpayer dollars should go towards abortion. And when we are funding the nation's largest abortion business, that they make up 35% of our nation's abortion market, our money is complicit in that big business. And so certainly, there's many ways through which we're trying to limit taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. We tried at the federal level through the Obamacare repeal bill, which viewers may remember, that effort through reconciliation fell short by just one vote. The administration has taken up the baton to try and limit taxpayer funding in other ways, but this is just one of many ways through which the people are speaking out through their elected representatives at the state level and at the federal level to stop taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood, not just Planned Parenthood, but all abortion businesses.
Gayle, many pro-lifers are expressing surprise and disappointment that newly confirmed Justice Brett Kavanaugh sided with the majority in refusing to take up this case. What's your reaction to that?
Right, well, I don't think we should make any grand inferences from this action. Under Supreme Court rules, in these cases where they're reviewing lower court decisions, the Supreme Court has discretion over which cases they will review and have oral arguments and make decisions on. So in this case, there's a rule of 4 that if 4 justices decide that they're willing to review the case, then they take it up. So we had Justice Thomas, who dissented from the denial of the review. Justice Gorsuch and Justice Alito concurred with Justice Thomas in his dissent. So even though Justice Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh did not issue any opinion or comment on the denial of the review of this particular case, we know that they must not have agreed, because you only need 4 justices in order to have a review. The interesting thing that Justice Thomas talked about in his dissent is that this case is ripe for review because there are principles, there's a split in the circuits, and so individuals who are in one state will face different abilities to sue than individuals in other states, and it's an important case and it's a recurring case. So this is an opportunity, as Justice Thomas said, for the court to do its job. And unfortunately, we know that the other justices, the 6 justices who did not join Justice Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch, decided not to take it up.
And this isn't the last time that the court's going to have the opportunity to rule on any cases that relate to abortion. In fact, there's a lot more litigation that's making its way right now through the different courts that deal with the issue even more directly than this. So, you know, we had to hope and pray for those future cases.
So Mallory, finally, where do we go from here? What are the next pro-life steps?
Right. Well, I think, so Planned Parenthood receives $400 million a year in taxpayer funding. A majority of that is Medicaid funding, which is the issue here, but the Title X funding, which viewers have been mobilizing on all this last year, we submitted more than 30,000 comments from the show to HHS in support of the Protect Life Rule, which was those new regulations that the Trump administration came out with to stop taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood through Title X and redirect that money to comprehensive alternatives. So the rule, they've been receiving comments, and now we're waiting on the administration to finalize the Protect Life Rule, and we're hopeful that they'll do so very soon. But that would be an amazing victory for the pro-life movement, because it will stop $50 to $60 million of our tax dollars from going to the abortion business, and it will send that money, make it available for real healthcare alternatives.
Well, thank you both for being here for this sound pro-life analysis on the Supreme Court announcement. Gayle Trotter and Mallory Quigley, thank you.
Great to be with you.
The Supreme Court has declined to review a case that would have addressed the issue of whether states can redirect Medicaid funding away from Planned Parenthood. Following this disappointment, the pro-life movement is looking to other avenues to defund the abortion giant and send taxpayer dollars to real healthcare alternatives. And that brings us to this week's call to action. Here's how you can take pro-life action this week. Go to prolifeweekly.com and ask President Donald Trump to finalize the Protect Life Rule. Again, go to prolifeweekly.com. The Protect Life Rule stops Title X family planning dollars from going to abortion groups like Planned Parenthood. If this rule is finalized and goes into effect, Planned Parenthood will lose up to $60 million of our tax dollars each year. It's their second largest source of tax funding. If you go to prolifeweekly.com and enter in some of your basic information, your message will go directly to the Trump administration. Let's take action and send a clear message that we do not want our tax dollars going to abortion providers. Go to prolifeweekly.com to ask President Trump to finalize the Protect Life Rule. We go now to pro-life headlines from around the globe. Chile's constitutional court recently threw out a regulation that prohibited some private hospitals and clinics from refusing to perform abortions as a matter of conscience. Last year, Chile legalized abortion in limited circumstances, but also issued a regulation that forbade private health organizations to refuse to perform abortions if they received state funds. Some legislators challenged the regulation, arguing that it violated freedom of association and conscience. The court supported that challenge in a decision that cannot be appealed. In Belgium, officials have opened a criminal investigation into the 2010 death of an autistic woman whom they believe may have been illegally poisoned. The 38-year-old woman was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a mild form of autism, 2 months before she was euthanized. Her family filed a criminal complaint alleging there were irregularities in her death. And researchers from Brazil recently announced a woman who received a transplanted uterus from a deceased donor has given birth to a live baby. The researchers said the birth via cesarean section marks the first time a live baby was born from a transplanted uterus from a deceased woman. The child was conceived through in vitro fertilization, a practice condemned by the Catholic Church. Planned Parenthood's new president, Dr. Leana Wen, officially took over the nation's largest abortion business last month.
I'm an immigrant. When I was 8, my parents brought me here from China.
Wen is a medical doctor and an immigrant from China, but now another woman who is an immigrant from China is speaking out against Wen's pro-abortion work.
I'm an immigrant. When I was 4, my parents immigrated from China, first to New Zealand and then to America.
Lisa Smiley shares in a video addressed to Dr. Wen that she too is an immigrant from China, but that escaping China's one-child policy shaped her views to be pro-life, not pro-abortion. Joining us now from Dallas, Texas is Lisa Smiley, an advocate for the unborn and a mother of 5. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
First off, can you tell us more about your family's life in China and the risks your mother took to have you?
Yes, so I was born in China, and in our family there are 5 girls and 1 boy. And all 5 of the girls were actually born in communist China, where there was a one-child policy for about 40 decades. And I was born after the one-child policy came into effect illegally, along with my older sister and my youngest sister. And when my mother became pregnant with me and my sisters, she actually had to go into hiding and hide from the government officials who were checking up on families and forcing abortions on women who had more than 1 child. So that's what my family, and especially my mother, had to go through in order to protect me from the government. And so I'm just so indebted for her and all the things that she did for us.
That is incredible courage that your mother showed. You and Dr. Leana Wen, who is the new president of Planned Parenthood, share a similar background in that you both immigrated from China at a young age, but you two have reached drastically different conclusions when it comes to unborn life. Can you speak to that?
So when I read that she had become the president of Planned Parenthood, I started reading up on her story. And like you said, we do have very similar backgrounds in terms of us both immigrating from China. But because of my experience and what my mother had to go through in order to give birth to me, I've always been pro-life. And it's just ironic to me when I read her story that she actually came from China like me, but instead of, coming to America, maybe perhaps speaking out against some of the human rights violations that her family moved from, that she has come to America to fight for abortion rights for women to actually, abort children. Right. And to me, that was just heartbreaking.
And Lisa, your pro-life views really came into play when, as an adult, you chose life for your son. Can you tell us about your son and his story?
So when I became pregnant with our firstborn son, I was 23, I was young, and at my 20-week ultrasound, they told us that we were having a boy, and we were extremely excited. This was our firstborn. And then they proceeded to tell us, hey, there's something wrong with your son's heart. He essentially only had half a heart, and they suggested we abort him to save us the trouble and the heartbreak that it might cause us.
But you decided you were going to give life to your son.
Yes, we refused abortion, and the doctors did warn us of all the things that we would have to go through, all the heart surgeries, and they even warned us that we would even bury our son. And, you know, we didn't know what the future held, and we believed in life, and, you know, we just chose life and just left it up to God at that point.
And he did live a beautiful life, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Finally, Lisa, as Dr. Leana Wen begins her term as president of Planned Parenthood, what is your message to her?
I think, you know, she has an incredible story where she came from China and she has just achieved so much in her life. And I think as someone who is an immigrant myself, I just ask her, you know, just reconsider your position. I mean, you are the president of Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion lobby in America, and just stop and think, what are you fighting for? And I know she feels that she's fighting for women's rights, but, you know, what about the rights of the preborn and all the women that were never given their rights because of abortion? And that's just always been my message, whether it's to her or, you know, for other doctors, for, you know, women who might be considering abortion. And I'm just praying and hoping that my story would just bring to light just the value of life.
Absolutely. I hope she takes your message to heart. Lisa Smiley, pro-life writer and speaker, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
When we come back,
I think every family is messy, really. I mean, that's the reality, whether you have one child or 10 children, because life always throws things at you that you don't expect.
Hear how a Catholic married couple with 10 kids are empowering other families to live a holier, messier life. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. This week we celebrate Our Lady of Guadalupe. Our Lady appeared to St. Juan Diego in Mexico in 1531, and she left us an image of herself imprinted miraculously on the natives' tilma. In a span of 8 years following the apparition, about 9 million Aztecs in Mexico converted to Catholicism. The image portrays a pregnant Mary, so Our Lady of Guadalupe has become the patroness of the unborn. Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. Abortion advocates never miss an opportunity to diminish the humanity of the unborn, not even on Human Rights Day. That's this week's Speak Out segment. Human Rights Day on December 10th is the anniversary of when the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Planned Parenthood took to Twitter to mark the occasion by dehumanizing the unborn. Repro rights are human rights, the group wrote several times in a tweet. Of course, for Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion provider, repro rights is a euphemism for abortion. Abortion lobbyists NARAL joined in, tweeting out, "Abortion access is a human right." Encyclopedia Britannica says human rights are rights that belong to an individual or group of individuals simply for being human. The unborn are simply human. From the moment of fertilization, an unborn child has a unique set of DNA that differs from both of their parents, that differs from any other human being that has lived or will live. The unborn are members of the human race. They are our youngest, our littlest, and deserving of our protection. The cause for human rights is a cause worth fighting for, but we cannot exclude our most vulnerable brothers and sisters. History will frown upon efforts to exclude members of the human race from their inherent human rights. Planned Parenthood and NARAL cannot wave the banner of human rights in one hand while killing humans with the other. We hope and pray those who falsely push abortion as a human right will one day come to be promoters of peace and justice for humans in the womb. Remember, there is always something you can do at home to counter today's culture of death. Follow this week's call to action. Ask President Trump to finalize the Protect Life rule. Go to prolifeweekly.com. In today's filtered world, many families might feel the pressure to put on a perfect face. But in this week's Pro-Life Focus, we introduce you to a Catholic couple encouraging families to be authentic and holy, and sometimes that looks a little messy. Peek inside of any home, and you'll find family life often looks a little messy. For Steubenville, Ohio couple Mike and Alicia Hernan, it's something they know all too well.
What do we know? I think every family is messy, really. I mean, that's the reality, whether you have one child or 10 children, because life always throws things at you that you don't expect.
Married for 25 years, they have 10 kids and have learned their share of parenting lessons along the way.
We have 10 kids from ages 6 to 23. And if each child was the same, we would have been perfect parents a number of years ago.
Exactly.
But each one is so different. I feel like they didn't come with a manual in the first place, but each time we have to almost relearn parenting, especially when we had teenagers and figuring all that out.
Mike and Alicia say they wish they had mentors who accompanied them in their family journey to help them figure things out. After some nudging from a priest and friends, the two decided to step into a role they wish someone had filled for them.
Welcome to Messy Parenting, a Catholic conversation on marriage and family. I'm Mike Hernan.
I'm Alicia Hernan.
And in 2015, they created the Messy Family Podcast.
There was a time period in our life where we had 5 teenagers living under our roof, and it was a very crazy time.
Their Catholic conversations cover a multitude of family topics and real-life advice.
Get to a place where you are walking the talk. You're not just telling them what to do. And then if you're at the dinner table, dads, moms, no phones.
The couple is clear. They're not counselors. They're not pediatricians. They are parents who just want to share their learned lessons with others.
Sometimes we're sharing our mistakes, a window into our world, but also just giving them broad principles that they can think about and parent perfectly for their kids. Right. Because there is no perfect plan out there, but we're sharing hopefully some of our stories, but also the wisdom of the church so that people can apply it to their own unique family.
Over 100 episodes later, the podcast is now downloaded by 10,000 families each month. With this virtual mentorship success, the Catholic couple has now decided to take their podcast and build it into a ministry with the launch of the Messy Family Project last month. Their website includes podcast episodes, downloadable resources, and recommended books.
The Messy Family Project is an organization dedicated to serving parents, empowering them to build vibrant Catholic families in a culture that really has gone crazy with our values. And this is where we believe is the most important work of the church today, is renewing and supporting families.
The Messy Family Project is an empowering platform because in a world that likes to plan parenthood, Mike and Alicia Hernan remind couples there's no such thing as a picture-perfect family. Can you speak to how the message of a messy family is countercultural in a world that prioritizes planning and perfect timing and filtered lives on social media?
Yes. Because I think there's an image, the Pinterest perfect family, it doesn't exist. I mean, on social media, there's just this greater propensity to just put your perfect face forward, right? And as people look around with mommy blogs and all of that, there's mommy wars that go on, that people are looking at this ideal that really isn't real. And what we want to offer is just pull back the curtain and say, it's okay to not be perfect as the world would want you to be.
We really want to be mentors, virtual mentors to couples and to families all over this country who are just doing the best they can. And they just need an example of our family, just kind of open up our doors and say, look, this is hard. You make mistakes. You mess up sometimes. It's okay. Keep going. God is faithful. He'll be there for you.
This Catholic couple believes embracing the mess can be a purifying experience.
And I think that what we have learned through our experience of parenting is just that your kids really make you holy. Like your kids really make you holy because they reveal your weaknesses. They reveal your weaknesses, but at the same time, you love them so much, you're compelled to be the best person that you possibly can be for the love of this child.
The project aims to empower parents, strengthen marriages, and bring families closer to Christ, because families are society's building blocks.
When we look at the church, we have to recognize that the family is the building block of all of society, but of the church. You know, John Paul II would say, so goes the family, so goes the church in the world. And so sometimes we get so caught up in the big things that are out of our control that we miss that which is right within our own home.
The Hernans believe this is the age that families will renew the church, so we need them to be holier than ever.
In light of the church sex abuse crisis happening right now, does that especially speak to the need for families to be holy?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Because I do not believe you are not going to have holy religious. You will not have holy priests. They are not coming from and or supported by holy families. And if we want holy priests in the future, they are formed right here in your family.
The Messy Family Project is a way to transform the world, starting from your very own home.
You can find out more at messyfamilyproject.org. That does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, but I'd love to hear from you before next week. Email me at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com or like my public page on Facebook so we can keep this pro-life conversation going. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.